I'm a big believer in a rising tide raises all boats. I think seeing what you can do with the people around you to build something greater for all of you together is the only way to do it. I think freelancing can be such an isolating thing and make you want to compare yourself to others and can kind of fracture communities sometimes. But I think it's so important to bring it together because everything's better in a community, and it's so much more fun to have people to collaborate with and to not feel alone in the freelancing world, because sometimes you go a stretch without work and you feel like, oh no, I'm never going to work again. And then that's usually the day you get the call for the next thing.
Hi, and welcome to Chasing the Same Sun, Adventures in Global Filmmaking. I'm your host, Lagan Sebert, one of the founders of Hometeam, and today we're talking with Johnny Valencia. Johnny is a filmmaker based in Los Angeles and Seattle. He's a DP, director, and photographer who's worked with a who's who in the music and entertainment world. He has long-term creative partnerships with A-list entertainers including Terrence Malick, Ed Sheeran, Macklemore, Kesha, and Imagine Dragons, among others. The music video he DP'd and edited for Ed Sheeran, Shape of You, has more than 6 billion views and counting. And next year, the Terrence Malick film The Way of the Wind, which he was second unit DP on, is set to release. So many high-profile artists come back to Johnny again and again because not only is he a talented filmmaker, he's also a kind soul who can make the production experience a joy. That's also why he's one of our favorite collaborators at Hometeam. Johnny, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I was really excited to have you on the podcast and to talk to you for a lot of reasons. Obviously, we've worked together a lot. We've been on set together with Imagine Dragons, with her. You've worked with Hometeam on a ton of different projects. I think where I wanted to start though is I wanted to ask you about the Seattle crew that you're a part of, kind of like where it all started, because that crew is definitely something I've been inspired by throughout my career. And especially the way I look at it, and tell me if I'm wrong, but it's kind of like the creative community surrounding Macklemore and Ryan Lewis in Seattle. And it seems like you've been a key part of that. And I'd love to know how you got in with that whole crew and, how it all started.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on the podcast. It's great to be here. But that is kind of how I got started in filmmaking. I separately knew both Ryan Lewis, Macklemore's producer, and Jason Koenig kind of before things got rolling. Ryan was actually a family friend and gave me guitar lessons when I was a kid. And he was just starting to do some photography as well. I don't think he was working with Macklemore yet. He'd just gotten out of a screamo band that he was in and spoke in before that.
That's funny. Okay.
Yeah. And Jason, I don't remember exactly how we met. We just had a bunch of mutual friends and I started doing photography with him. And Jason's wife's best friend was Ryan's older sister. So they started working together when Ryan was getting a little more into photography. And then as Ryan's thesis project when he was in college came up, he had just started working with Ben Macklemore and called me and Jason because we were his two photography friends, and we started shooting that project. It was called Fake Empire. I think that was back in like 2009. So I knew both Jason and Ryan early in high school, but we started working together right after I graduated.
Were they actually like a group at that point? Or that was before they were actually like performing together?
I'm not even sure. I want to say it's before they were performing together. They met on MySpace, and I think I shot their first show together at Bumbershoot in Seattle maybe a few months after that. But they were just friends starting to make music, and Ben was the best candidate for an actor in Ryan's thesis project. So we just started working on it.
Yeah, that's crazy. So that was a school project.
Yeah, it was.
So that's a little different. So in my mind, just so you know, the story that I made up in my mind is that like Ben was like, you guys all went to the same high school or something. And then he like, just like grabbed you out of photography class to like start making his music videos. But so not exactly that, but like.
Yeah, I mean, some of them were in school together. Like Hannah and Trisha's Ben's wife. They produced a lot of the music videos. They were high school friends, and I think a few of the musicians were also high school friends. And then the rest of us kind of came together around music and photography outside of that.
Yeah, it's funny. So I looked like when I was prepping for this, I looked up the fake Empire video, which is great, by the way.
Thanks.
Feel like it, it holds up. Um, but even in the description, it talks about, um, you know, it was shot with Canon 5Ds and Nikons, and I just love the fact that you guys were like, even at that time, kind of just like flexing the indie model, right? Like when you made that video with them, were you still in school? Were you like already starting to like work as a, filmmaker, photographer around town, or, what kind of happened from that point?
Yeah, so I'd done a little bit of photography before then. Um, I don't it was right after I graduated high school, and Jason and I had been to Zambia to make a nonprofit film together. I'd made a few short films in high school, but that was pretty much the extent of our filmmaking experience. Otherwise, we just knew photography. And so the camera we used for that was 5D Mark I. The Mark II wasn't out yet, which was the big camera that kind of revolutionized indie filmmaking and let people shoot with depth of field without the ground glass adapter. So we just like leaned into how do we get the best image possible, and the compromise we had to make was 7 frames a second instead of 24. So we just shot burst mode on these cameras, which created a really cool atmosphere on set. I think when you're on a set with a film camera and people can hear the film moving through the camera, it creates an energy that like really lights people up and brings life to the set. And hearing these shutters go, I think did a very similar thing, because people were like, "Oh, we're filming now." Also, the buffer only holds like, I don't know, 150 images, so you only have so long to roll each take. So people need to be on it as soon as the camera starts rolling. But we had a lot of fun with that. And yeah, batch edited the whole thing in Photoshop and finished it in Ryan's parents' basement. A lot of work in our parents' basements and attics.
That's awesome. So is Jason older than you? Like, was he was he already kind of like doing things professionally, or were you guys kind of in the, same like era, same class or whatnot?
No, Jason's really, they're all a few years older than me. I kind of came along initially as the younger brother. Jason had a photography company, and I started working with him. And yeah, so that was kind of how I got started doing photography professionally.
Nice. So then, so did you go to film school or college at all, or did you just start working immediately?
So no, I went to University of Washington
Okay.
and was starting there, yeah, like right after we shot Fake Empire. I actually did a gap year before that living in Guatemala. And that was when I really started getting into photography from the creative side more. But then, yeah, the Macklemore stuff, kind of before they blew up, was really intermingled with college, finding ways to do the projects while mostly going to class. And there was one quarter that I definitely faltered in that. I think it was maybe a year or so after Fake Empire, but we did the music video for And We Danced and shot it in my buddy's house in college, and then Ryan's parents' hot tub, a club in downtown Seattle. And maybe 2 weeks after the quarter started, we were editing, kind of all living at the studio, sleeping on the floor there. And I was like, "So you guys, I've been supposed to be in classes for the last 2 weeks, and I've kind of skipped all of them, and I don't know what to do." And Brian was like, "Oh, no problem. Like talk to my thesis professor, and you can do an independent study, drop out of your classes, come on tour with us, and get school credit for it." And it was like one of the last days to withdraw from the quarter without paying tuition. So I didn't fail any classes and went on tour with them for a month.
What year was that?
That was, I think, 2011. So that was before Thrift Shop or Can't Hold Us or anything. And We Danced was probably the biggest song.
Yeah, I mean, I think back to that era, and I mean, it was especially when Thrift Shop came out. I literally remember where I was when I heard Thrift Shop for the first time. I was living in New York. And we would always listen to like the main pop station. Oh, Z100, that's what it was. Z100, because we would always listen to the big pop stations because my sister, Kesha, was on the radio at that time, and we always wanted to like hear when they were playing her songs. And Thrift Shop came out, and I was with my wife, and both of us were like, "What is this? And like, why are they playing it on the pop station? It was like, because it sounded like some like Eric B and Rakim, but like from the future. I've always paid attention to what you guys were doing up there, because I also just thought it was really good. Um, but like, I mean, what was it like to just be in the middle of that?
Uh, I feel like initially, really throughout a lot of it up until, I don't know, 2014, there wasn't there wasn't like time to zoom out and look at what was going on. It was just like, okay, there's momentum here. I feel like we're all working on something special. Um, so there wasn't a ton of consideration on like how much of our lives do we give this. We were just like, this is a special moment. Let's dive into this. So I don't know how many of those shows I shot, did that tour, and the music videos were pretty back to back to back. Some of them, like Other Side, were just interspersed. We shot that over like a year and a half, maybe, just catching little moments. And really, when we started it, we didn't know anything about production. I think we used one light on Fake Empire. We were doing a fake sunlight coming into Ben's parents' basement. And then we started using more lights on Fake Empire and just started doing some reshoots because we realized initially we didn't know at all what we were doing. And it got better and better and better as we reshot it. And I think maybe, I don't know, 20% of the first shoot actually made it in. We thought that was going to be most of the music video, but we were like, no, we can do better than this. And we weren't spending much money, so we just kept reshooting it until we were super happy with it.
Were you involved much in the Can't Hold Us video, or was that one of the ones where you were not as involved?
I was on a study abroad for part of that and in school for a lot of it, but I did make it for one of the shoots. I did the plane to plane shoot up in Canada, which was super fun. So like in those early days, we didn't know anything about roles on film sets. So we were all a little bit director, all a little bit DP, all a little bit AD.
Right.
And on that one, I think I was the movie didn't exist yet. We need to stabilize the camera. So we got this weird gyroscope. I don't know if you've ever worked with one of those in a helicopter. It's like a huge 20-pound ball that basically hangs under the camera and it keeps it level.
Yeah, I do know about that. Yeah, that's cool.
It was a fun piece of equipment to use, but I was on the headset kind of directing the planes where to fly between these mountain canyons and timing like when to throw the flag out the window. And then we shot some stuff on a dock down there. But yeah, that project was a lot of fun. I think they shot it in like 5 different countries on tours and different things.
Yeah, you've been involved in my estimation, some of the greatest music videos ever made. So that's one of them for sure.
Wow, thank you. That's an honor to hear.
I mean, just to say it quickly, like I definitely relate to that. Like I think, when my sister kind of blew up, it was the same thing where it was like me and a few friends, just kind of jumped on the bus literally, and like just you're like you're just chasing it. You're not really asking where you're going. You're just kind of like chasing it and trying to keep up. But then it's cool. Like again, like I'm from stalking your Instagram, it seems like you did start to work with some other artists, pretty quickly after that. Like, Chance the Rapper, Leon Bridges. How did you kind of try and expand from, just working with that crew? Was it just like word of mouth, or, I mean, how did you kind of like go from that first part of your career to try and like turn it into a career basically?
Yeah. It definitely took some time to figure out, because I was still, even on the heist tour, I was still in college. At the time, I thought I was taking the quarter off and I was going to go back spring quarter to complete it. I remember being on tour in Paris and emailing my advisor and being like, "Hey, what do I have to do to finish college?" And she was like, "Actually, you have all the credits you need. You're done." So I was just like sitting there in the cafeteria in the venue in Paris, and I was like, "Hey, if anyone cares, I just graduated college. I'm pretty stoked, but that is so far removed from my life right now."
Yeah.
But those connections I had started to initially make through Macklemore and Ryan Lewis, like on the Europe tour, I was sharing a bus with Chance and his crew. The video team was maybe 3 or 4 of us, and then his team was like 5 people, in one of those sick double-decker European tour buses.
Right.
It was a lot of fun.
Yes. Those are great.
So yeah, I just got to be friends with him, shot some of his shows, and then continued to connect whenever he was in Seattle or something, went to studio sessions and different things. And then Leon Bridges, I just randomly met in the hotel lobby when we were at Bonnaroo and started chatting with him and did a little portrait session with him.
That's cool. They're both of those guys are so incredibly talented.
Yeah.
Did you film on that series? I think it was like sponsored by like Buffalo Jeans. Was that the one that you guys were filming?
Yeah, so I had done the tour, the national tour before that. They skipped one because, like those tour videos really are all consuming more so than anything else I've ever done. The first tour in 2011, I would shoot all day and then edit whenever we were in the bus and edit most of every night and still always be behind schedule. So that one, they found some money to get a bigger crew. I think we had 10 of us on the bus and I was the lead editor on that. Jason was the director. We had 5 cameras running pretty much all day, every day. And I was just like swimming in footage. I left the tour bus like 2 hours a day, maybe. And then when there were little outings, sometimes I'd go out. Like we went to Canada for one thing. So I was just the only person that went out to shoot that. And it was a lot of fun, but it's made a lot of work since feel a lot easier than those tour bus days where you never escape.
I definitely relate to that as well, filming and editing on a tour bus. And that was like, again, I'm like giving it away, like how much I was like watching you guys. Cause like that was like when I pitched so many branded tour series using that as a reference, like that
No way.
Buffalo. Yeah.
That's
And
awesome
then
to
I
hear.
think it actually worked with when we did the Adventures of Kesha and Macklemore with T-Mobile. Like that was like, one of the main references as well, like that we, pitched it with. But that's cool. I actually didn't know that you shot on that. It was done incredibly well.
Yeah, it's funny how many similar life experiences we've had. I mean, just being close
Yeah.
to something where it's like, okay, this person close to me has like a really incredible shot at blowing up their music, and what can we do to support that and create film work around it?
Well, and it's also, I mean, I think obviously you had their trust, right? Because I think at a certain point, like from the artist perspective, it's like, it's about trust, like from trust that you're like, number one, not going to be shady. And then number two, that you're like, have good creative instincts because everything is moving so fast that they don't really have time to like look over your shoulder. I can't imagine as much either, you know?
Yeah, totally. I think that's one thing with Ben and Ryan. I always think about this. I don't know if you know the Ira Glass quote about the gap, like the creative gap.
No.
It's like taste is the most important thing. And a lot of us hopefully have great taste to begin with, and we get frustrated with what we make because we don't know how to bridge that gap and make what we want to be making. So you just need to keep making and keep making. So I think we were so lucky to have people like Ben and Ryan who had such a visual taste and such great ideas to just keep pushing us forward. And it was always a group of us kind of critiquing our own work, and no one felt singled out being like, this isn't good enough. It was all like, no, we know we can do better than this. We know what the vision is. So we were always able to just keep pushing.
Well, it's like everybody's just, learning together, right? I think to a certain extent, it sounded like everybody's just trying to, I mean, because, Macklemore and Ryan, they both like had directing credits on a lot of those videos too. So it's like they clearly cared about it and were trying as well.
Yeah. Yeah, they definitely put a lot into those videos. I feel like Ben has always been a multi-dimensional artist. And with the name Macklemore came from a high school project he did. I don't know. He always tells fake stories. I don't know if I should the real one, but he invented this character, Professor Macklemore, and was all dressed in stuff he found in thrift shops. And so his visual sensibilities, I would say, are pretty much as strong as his musical sensibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was going to move on. I think I was going to move on to, I wanted to talk about Shape of You.
I mean, I feel like Shape of You that was the next big jump for all of us. The tour days when we did the Buffalo Jeans tour videos. It was a series of 5. There were 10 of us on the bus, and that was when we first kind of assembled the Seattle crew. We had Jason Koenig directing, his wife Jenny, and Hannah Kimmerer producing. Ryan Haug was with us on the bus. He had the first movie that was allowed out in the wild from Free Fly. He was good friends with those guys, and I don't know if they did us more of a service or if we did them more of a service taking it on tour because that thing had a lot of bugs to be troubleshooted. But it was pretty cool to get to have that. I feel like we were really lucky to get to use that and experiment with it on tour.
That's the all-star team for sure. Ryan Haug, otherwise known as Bubba, and this is pre-motion state, right?
I was wondering that when I was thinking about this podcast. I feel like it was. I don't know exactly when Motion State started, but I would guess him, Corey, Amber, and Sam were like just getting things together around then, because he was transitioning from being more on the like gear tech side to being more of a specialty op and building their production company.
Yeah, it's a lot of talent. It's a lot of talent on that team right there.
Yeah, we were pretty lucky.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a philosophy that I kind of attribute loosely to the Seattle crew that I can't remember exactly who it was. I think it was like somebody who was doing wardrobe on a production up in Seattle that we were working on with Motion State, and
Probably Teresa.
probably yeah, and I just remember like people were all stressed about stuff, and you know how it is, and like everybody's worried about the schedule and about the client and everything. And I can't remember exactly how she said it, but she's like, everybody needs to just relax. Like any day where you're making art with your friends is a good day. And I think she attributed it to Ben too, frankly. But that's like something like I've never forgot that, because it's like if you're in, I see it as if you're doing the job right, especially as a producer who's like, you know, helping put projects together. Like really that's what it's about at the end of the day, is like, let's put people together who, are friendly, who are friends, and let's make something cool. And like that's really, if you're doing that, it shouldn't be that bad, you know?
Yeah, totally. I think, yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think it's like a huge privilege to be able to get together and make art with friends. Like doing music, initially, like doing music videos as a profession, I'm like, this is crazy. We just get to like have fun and have money to spend doing awesome stuff together, doing what we love, building something awesome. And I think the community aspect of having fun with friends is such an important part of filmmaking. And I just love the idea of being able to come together and look around us and be like, okay, how do we make this grow together? How do we all rise up together? I'm a big believer in a rising tide raises all boats. I think seeing what you can do with the people around you to build something greater for all of you together is the only way to do it. I think freelancing can be such an isolating thing and make you want to compare yourself to others and can kind of fracture communities sometimes. But I think it's so important to bring it together because everything's better in a community, and it's so much more fun to have people to collaborate with and to not feel alone in the freelancing world, because sometimes you go a stretch without work and you feel like, oh no, I'm never going to work again. And then that's usually the day you get the call for the next thing. But I think it's so nice to talk with other people who are in the same boat and see like, oh, okay, other people have busy times, other people have slow times, and to remind yourself that you're not in this alone.
Yeah. No, it's great. And it's, yeah, I do feel like from kind of first watching and then working with the whole Seattle crew, I've learned a lot, but I've learned, just, don't take it too seriously and enjoy, enjoy each other in the process, I think is another one of the big things that, I think is super important. There's a few other things I wanted to talk about. I mean, there's a bunch of projects we've worked on together. I think the one other one that I wanted to just briefly ask you about, before we, move on, I want to ask you about, the feature you've been working on too, is the Hannah Waddingham Home for Christmas special that we worked on together. That one was fun for a lot of reasons. I mean, number one, we were working with like most of the cast of Ted Lasso. And at least for me, like I was a huge fan of that show. So I just thought it was like, I mean, working with Jason Sudeikis, for instance, is just, a pretty special guy to be able to work with. But I remember when we got that call to do that project, and again, of course, we only had like a week or two to prep, and they were shooting in LA. Um, yeah, you were the first call because I was like, I thought after thinking about it for a second, I was like, all right, we're gonna be on set with Jason Sudeikis, Hannah Waddingham, and all those folks. Like, we can't really mess around here. So, um, I knew you were the right guy for the job. But like, what was your experience like working on that project?
Thanks. That was a great project to be a part of. I feel like I got the call. I mean, I think you guys got the call like less than a week out from the shoot.
Yeah, it was pretty quick.
Yeah, so we just threw it together, shot in two locations or two rooms in one spot. But it was fun. It was, I mean, definitely reminded me a lot of working on the music videos with Ed, because I feel like you just need to have everything ready to go and get things dialed. But I think this was even a little bit more so like that. But the team we had was so incredible to get everything set up and pre-lit. Marcus, I feel like, really knew exactly what he needed. And Marcus, the director, it was super helpful to have a clear concept and clear blocking so we could just set up and prioritize only what we needed and use the little bit of time we had to get all those scenes. But it was great working with that cast and getting to be in the room watching these actors from Ted Lasso interact with each other. And I don't know, felt a little bit like being a fly on the wall for watching some Ted Lasso like moments. And then, um, yeah, working with Jason Sudeikis for the scene in the cab was a lot of fun. We got to shoot on the volume, which was my first experience working with one of those. And I think the energy that they bring individually and especially when they're together really brings everyone to light on set. And like everyone's just smiling the whole time because it's so fun to see them interacting.
Yeah, no, it is. Um, cool. Well, I know I wanted to ask you about, so, you mentioned you've been working with Terrence Malick on his upcoming film, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about it. Like, what has that process been like?
Yeah, so it actually was a few years ago, but I think it's hopefully getting closer to completion now. Um, I was apprenticing under him for about a year. Initially, I was invited to work in the edit suite with them and learned a lot of his aesthetic and style through there. And then as he was gearing up to shoot his next movie, I saw little opportunities to remind him of my cinematography work. Um, I shot a short film for his assistant when I was in Austin, made a lot of my best friends there. It was a super fun year. And then that same year, the These Days music video I directed was nominated for the Brits. So I went out for that. And not long after asked him if I could work at all on his next movie. And so he brought me on initially to the test shoot that June. We shot in Rome and Iceland, and I really had no idea what I was in for. I just wanted to be a part of the movie, and he kind of threw me straight into the deep end. We were in Rome shooting some stuff, and I shot for a couple days, and he told me in Iceland, everyone was afraid to decide where the set should be because they don't want to get the light angles wrong, because he relies pretty much exclusively on natural light. And he was like, Johnny, just go to Iceland and decide where the set should be. And I was like, okay, I'll go decide where they should build these like 30-foot tall doors in the middle of the desert and put all these other things. So I flew up to Iceland and we put the set in. We ended up shooting that around like 6 different countries. Got to live out a lot of my childhood Indiana Jones dreams.
So what year was this? Like,
This was 2019.
Oh my God, 2019. Yeah, because I read that it's coming. It's supposed to premiere in Cannes in next year, I believe, and it's called The Way of the Wind, and it's about the story of Jesus. Is this right?
Yeah, it's called Way of the Wind. I don't think there's too much out about the plot beyond it being about the life of Peter and following some of the life of Jesus, but it's something Terry's been working on for over 20 years. I think he wanted to shoot it initially before Thin Red Line and had this amazing catalog of locations, way more than he could ever make it to. So I was shooting second unit, and basically day one, he started sending me off with principal actors to locations that he couldn't make it to.
Wow.
So we were shooting on like this beautiful Mirror Lake in Turkey, um, shot in Palermo, I want to say, and we were in Morocco. It was really a crazy experience and just nonstop. Another one of those things where it's just like you don't have time to stop and process. You need to run on instinct and trust you're making the right moves.
I'm curious, like what type of cameras, lenses, everything were you using on the Malick film?
So we shot that on a pretty small set of lenses. It was really, really a wild experience for me because I'm used to using all the different sets of lenses. And Terry always says that you would never change your eyeglasses, so why change your lens? And I half-heartedly agree with that sentiment. I think there's a place for a long lens, but he wants to always see the whole world. So the lens set we had was a Ultra Prime 8R, a Master Prime 12, 14, and 16. And we never got tighter than the 16. So pretty much everything was wide. They have incredible close focus. So you would get up close to the talent, and Terry loves letting it distort. I don't think the actors are as keen about it. But we shot in these environments pretty much using available light for all but a few of the days. He wrote the script to be daytime and picked locations where he knew the light angles would be in positions that he was happy with it. So we were really able to be free and keep the whole shoot pretty low gear wise. And so yeah, it was like tripods, steady cams, and a ton of handheld, just with a single lens, and learning to work with the 14 for pretty much an entire movie over 67 days was a really cool experience. Like I've never gotten to know a specific lens like that and really understand how it deals with every single circumstance because you work with it every day, never change it. And I really got hooked on the way you can use depth in wide lenses. I think to be able to get close to an actor to make them more pronounced in the scene, or get further away to make them tiny, and then put them in relation to each other. I did one shot that I really hope makes the movie, with one character massive in the foreground and another character tiny walking off into the distance. And it's kind of meant to be an ominous moment for that one character, and I hope it makes it in.
Was it digital or film?
Oh yeah, so we shot entirely red helium on that.
Wow.
The 8K IMAX sensors, and Terry switched from digital to film, or from film to digital a few years ago, just because he likes really being able to immerse the camera in the environment and to run long takes without cutting and let the scene develop.
Wow. How big were the crews on the set on those, like when you were doing like second unit stuff?
I mean, it varied. He tried to keep it really small. We always had like big production hubs that were maybe a quarter mile from where we were filming, but actually around the camera, I would say it was usually about 6 of us. And then talent would be from 2 to 30. I mean, was probably another AD if we had 30 people, but yeah, it was a pretty small production, so he was able to stretch it over so long in so many different countries.
And were you guys doing like zero lighting, or were you at least like, doing like bounces and stuff, or like pretty much like nothing?
His filmmaking works with a pretty strict dogma, and I think he really likes to use the environment, and a lot of his creative and visual choices come from philosophical ideas. I remember the day before we started shooting, he told me infinity is never soft. And that's why we shoot at an f/22 for the whole movie.
Wow.
No shallow depth of field. And I'm like, I feel like that's a lot more of a philosophical idea than it is a camera idea. It's just being translated. So we would work with the environments and find like, where is there a big rock that we can use as a natural bounce, and lean into, just working with the environment and letting the environment inform the film as much as we could.
Do you think that that experiences will like changed how you view lighting?
Oh yeah, I think it definitely did. I don't ascribe to the same never use lights approach. I think there's plenty of reasons you need to use lights, but I do think to first look at a scene and see, what does this space bring naturally? Where is the light going to come from? How can we augment this rather than try and strong arm it, is a really valuable way to look at it. And it helps you see the natural beauty of the location and to find what the location's offering you rather than trying to rearrange the location around what you want.
How did you first get in contact with him? Like you said, you got an apprenticeship. Was that like, how did that happen?
I got a random Facebook message from a friend asking if I wanted to work with this director, Terry. And my first thought was, oh, Terry Gilliam. Like, I love his movies. And he's like, no, Terrence Malick. And I kind of thought he was joking because it was just like so out of the blue and totally random friend saying it. But apparently, yeah, a couple of friends linked, and Terry's producer was meeting with somebody I knew and asked if they knew any cinematographers who also had editing experience. So yeah, I started talking with them, and I think 2 weeks later, I moved down to Austin and was there for like 6 months.
Wow, that's crazy. It seems like he just operates like pretty outside of the typical system, right? Or at least outside of the Hollywood system.
Yeah, I think he's experienced life both ways and much prefers the outside the Hollywood system life.
Right.
So he very much has that DIY mentality. I think back on Badlands, he, just like him and the lead actor, took the camera and just like road tripped for 2 weeks shooting beautiful stuff. And his mentality has always been like, how do we shrink down the production to allow flexibility and bring life to the scene? Even on like Thin Red Line, he would set up one camera and just run off with another camera and the actor and the DP and shoot what he actually wanted to get while he was distracting production in a different location.
Right.
So on
Yeah.
Way of the Wind, I was kind of that unit where I got to go to all of his remote dream locations. And I mean, so much of it was dictated by the light and location. And he's a big believer in finding something beautiful on the day instead of forcing yourself into something ahead of time. So yeah, it just led to a lot of creativity and coming up with things on the fly.
I'm very excited to see what all that looks like.
Me too. It's been
Have
a
you
while.
been involved
Yeah.
in the post process at all?
I've been to Austin a few times since they finished the shoot, and I've seen cuts here and there, but it was still, there's so much experimentation in his edits. I feel like it's hard to know what's moving towards final and what's just being tried. He, I think, never likes to settle on something and always likes to keep exploring differences, which is part of why he likes to take so much time with his edits. So I haven't worked on it as an editor, but I've definitely gone through to look at what some of they've worked on is, and I'm pretty excited about it.
With the experience working on the film with Terrence Malick, do you think like, is that where you're trying to head more these days, is into features, or what are your goals, like kind of like looking forward?
I'm definitely looking forward to doing more features. I think there's something really special about getting to work on longer form content and be able to develop a language throughout something and really to guide the viewer through something. I don't ever really want to stop doing short form content because I think it's such a good way to cut your teeth and have a shorter project where you get to try out a concept and you don't have to live with it for 2 hours. So I think you can take bigger swings in some ways. But I do really enjoy when I get to spend time developing an idea and an image and a way of using the camera over a longer period of time. And I also think the community aspect of a feature-length production is so fun. It's so much more like a summer camp. It kind of reminds me of tour a bit, except instead of as filmmakers, us big, it's a supporting part of it, we're the main part of it.
Right. That's cool. I've never worked on a feature, but that's actually, that sounds right. That you explain that in a way that I can understand.
Yeah. I found it a lot more natural, the transition, than I think I initially had expected it to be, because it seems, I don't know, in your head like they're two different things, but then when you start working on it, it's like, oh, this is very similar to what I've been doing. I just get so much more time to develop these ideas.
Right.
And so many more days to shoot them. It's kind of like making an album versus song, I feel like.
Right. Yeah. That's cool. And it's, I mean, because you have, you direct, you've edited a lot, obviously work as a cinematographer. Do you see yourself kind of wanting to pursue all three moving forward, or are you trying to hone in more, or or does it just depend?
I primarily work as a cinematographer now. I'm a co-founder in a post house that I have with a few other editor friends, Jason Koenig being one of them, and Rahman Ali from Terry's office. He edited 4 of his movies. But yeah, primarily doing cinematography. I'm definitely open to directing in the future, but I'm waiting for a project that I really feel like is a story that I need to tell. And I love cinematography because it's such a great creative and technical balance between knowing how to manage the light, to do the pre-production and plan the angles and plan the lighting diagrams, and then just the creative aspect of, I think cinematography is really, when it comes down to it, entirely about feeling and being the eyes of the audience and knowing what kind of perspective to give them on the situation.
Yeah.
I really enjoy that balance of bringing the director's vision to life and kind of having a guiding light to go off of, and then to run in that direction and bring the audience with me.
That's cool. So last question. So what, if you were going to give yourself from 10 years ago a piece of advice about filmmaking, what would you say?
If I was going to give myself one piece of advice 10 years ago, I think I would tell myself to spend more time being playful and trying new things, taking risks. Since I came from such an indie background and never went to film school or had any proper education, I think I spent some time trying to learn the proper industry way of doing things. But I think it would have been a lot more effective to learn more about industry communication. And I think communication is such a huge part of a film set, especially as they grow. Like, that was the biggest growing pain of the early years, was learning how do you have these ideas and then communicate them beyond yourself. And I think encouraging myself to not try and change the way I worked, but change the way I communicated about it, and be able to explain to crews that were working in more traditional ways, this is why we're doing this is what it can add, this is the flexibility we can have by doing things this way. And the other thing I would say is, I feel like I spent so much time thinking about, like, how do I work with somebody like Alfonso Cuarón or I don't know, Terrence Malick or Spielberg or someone. And I think a lot of what drew me to them was the filmmaking communities they had, like Cuarón and Iñárritu and Chivo in Mexico, and like the movie Brats in the 70s. And rather than looking up or into the past for groups like that, really realizing, like, I think you've been great at pointing out, the people I'm with are really special, and to build a community around me can create something to grow with, and a group of people that can be my own Iñárritu, Cuarón, Del Toro. And I think there's something really special about those long-term relationships in the film industry and getting to continue working alongside people.
Cool. Well, I have a few quick fires. What's something that makes the Seattle film community unique?
I think there's lots of things that make it unique, but a couple of the big ones would be, I think, the indie mentality, because there's like a good amount of corporate work in Seattle, but to go outside that and do music video or narrative work, I feel like there's not a ton of infrastructure to really do it. So everyone's just building stuff and designing stuff themselves, and it's really collaborative between departments. Everyone wants to help each other out, because there's also not as many crews up there, so people know each other a lot better than here in LA, where I feel like you're frequently working with new people on your crew. And another big thing is the weather. I think has a huge influence on the way people work. Here in LA, you can pretty much rely on the sun. It's always going to be in one spot. It's always going to be hard, direct sunlight. You're not going to have clouds. And in Seattle, you need to have so much flexibility. And I think there's a beauty in, like, being humble in front of your environment and letting it guide the storytelling and the image you can create. Because in Seattle, you could have overcast and direct sun like 5 or 6 times in a day, and knowing that you need to plan around that and be ready to work with the environment rather than just kind of strong-arming something. I think it really forces you to think in a different way and to be a bit more flexible.
Yeah, that's great. All right, few more. What's your favorite new film or TV show?
Ooh, Let's see. I just watched Disclaimer on Apple TV, and I thought that show was so beautifully done. It's Alfonso Cuarón, Chivo shot a lot of it, and I can't remember who the other DP was, with Kate Blanchett in it. And I just feel like it's been a while since I've seen the way like Chivo do those long handheld shots, and really the way the camera follows people. It just draws you in and kind of teleports you through the TV into the room, and is like such a non-judging, omniscient viewer that puts you uncomfortably close to the action in a really fascinating way. I also think that show worked with a non-chronological storyline really well, and I think that's a trope that gets used too often, but it felt like they had a very fresh take on that, using flashbacks and revealing the story as they went on.
I haven't even heard about that one, so I will definitely check that out.
Oh yeah.
Favorite piece of film gear and why?
This is a tough question for me because I feel like it depends so much on what you need to get done.
Yeah.
Sometimes I love to be handheld. Sometimes I love to be on a dolly. Like sometimes you need an Airy Mag. Sometimes you need a candle. And I feel like it's kind of a cop out, but I think like, I don't know, your legs and your eyes are so important when it comes to filmmaking, or just any way to move yourself to new perspectives and to really see what you're looking at.
So your legs and your eyes.
Yeah, legs and eyes, I would say, are the most important piece of filmmaking equipment to just understand the scene around you.
All right, that's fair. That's like, I think that's the best answer anybody could possibly get for that. All right, what is your next big filmmaking adventure?
So I've got a couple things coming up that I'm excited about. One of them is I'm working on developing a feature doc about a fishing community I was filming in South Africa a couple years ago. And I've just never been to a community that is so ready to have their story told. We showed up and it felt like the community had a story and wanted to tell it, and just immediately brought us in, wanted us to bring the camera everywhere. Everyone wanted to just show their lives and tell a bit of their story. And a lot of what's going on there is the commercial fishers are catching so much of this bycatch that the fish is now becoming an endangered species. And this is a small community who just live off like thousands of those fish a year, not millions. And all they want to do is catch those fish as they've done and just eat them to survive. And I think this story is such a microcosm of things going on around the world. I think a lot of it is these bigger corporations doing things that they're not even thinking about, and that can be someone's like lifeblood. And for them, it's just the extra fish they're catching. And I think those stories need to be told and put on a global stage.
That's awesome.
I'm excited about it. But I was going to say another project I'm working on is I've been working on a doc series talking with different religious scholars and theologians around the world for the last couple of years, and we'll be scaling it up over the next few years. And it's just been so cool to get to go to all these different countries. I was in Pakistan just a few weeks ago and talk with different people and get a little glimpse into their lives. And we've probably been to, 10 countries so far and like 20 to go. And it's really amazing to get to work on a project that just brings you literally all around the world.
Thanks to Johnny for being on the podcast. If you want to learn more about his work or what we're up to at Hometeam, check out the links in the show notes. And thanks for listening.